Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second part of my Criterion collection discussion. This is the second order of the films that I purchased off the Criterion collection. If you're not sure how I'm doing this, you can check out the beginning of my first video where I explain this a little bit more in detail. But this is where I'm going to be talking about the films that I purchased in my second order from the Criterion collection. As I said in the first video, there's always one film that spurs on this entire buying frenzy I go on. And that one film this time was Akira Kurosawa's Throne of Blood. Now, this movie actually I wanted to get off the Criterion collection because everywhere else it is, especially on Amazon in Canada, it is $157. I'm not buying a movie for $157 no matter how good it is. This movie is incredible. It really is. It's a loose adaptation of Shakespeare's Macbeth. I say loose because it's actually a film that's taking on stories of Japanese culture to infuse the story. It's taking the same kind of concept of a man who's ambitious and seeing spirits, and he's also got a wife who's kind of like talking into his ear about this. So it is an adaptation of Macbeth, but it's more of a film that's focusing on Japanese culture rather than the Scottish tale, which I like. First thing I want to talk about is the performances in this movie. In one of the supplements of this, which I love, this one supplement informs so much about this. The film is made with the style of No theater, which is a Japanese form of theater. That's N-O-H. I don't know exactly... I don't know much about No theater at all, but seeing it, it's mask-driven theater, and yet these actors don't wear masks, so all of the performances are very heightened, very over the top in terms of their facial expressions to get that kind of sense across, and yet they're so natural and they still fit together. The makeup in this is also inspired by No theater. The thing that really impressed me with this movie, though, is just how vast it is. How haunting. It's more haunting than horrifying. It's one of the first Kurosawa films I saw. The first one I saw was Seven Samurai, but this was the first one that I really said, I need to own that movie. What really got me with this movie was a lot of things. When I first saw it, it has to do close to the ending. There is a moment that is pure shocking. It also has to do, like I said, with the performances. Then when I bought the movie, there's an essay. Here, I'll just show you. This is one reason I also buy Criterion films. And I didn't necessarily talk about it with the last film, the last video, because I don't really have all the essays from the other ones. And I read them a while back. I don't remember them too much. But this is the first time I actually remember something very important from the essays. And this movie has a lot. But then there is something that actually became very important to me, and something I remember with me everywhere now, and it's notes on subtitling Japanese films. There are two subtitle versions of this movie. You can use two different types, and one of them was done by I don't remember the names, but they're done by two different people. And the first person talks about how they wanted the subtitles to match the tone of the movie and the style of the movie. They wanted it to match that regal sense of epicness and also match the tone of the individuals that were having the conversation. So it's very wordy, very, it's like painting words. It's like words that you would use to describe paintings. It's the kind of words you see when you start to think of royalty, just royal words. It's a really interesting choice. It fills the words with a lot of flavor, so they fit with the film. However, another person does very basic subtitling, and the reason they do that is actually really interesting because they do it with more simple words so that we, the audience, are not pulled away from the words and focus more on the images. We look at the words like we just glance at them basically, like onto the television, or in the theater, and we look back up. Glance down, look back up. Glance down, look back up. And we're not being pulled from the overall image. And actually, I tried this, and it actually is it works. What they're doing. When it's basic, I can get the whole gist quickly and look back up. Now, when it's the other person, I'm thinking through the words and I'm getting flavor from the words and kind of seeing the images, but I don't necessarily register them. So this is a movie that I think you do need to buy it off the Criterion if you want to get the full experience, because then you'll be able to get the sense of royalness and the real sense of the world that's being created by the one subtitle, but then the other subtitle, and you can pay more attention to the images. The next film is a movie that I was not sure if I wanted to purchase, and then I thought about it more and more, and I thought, yes. And actually, this movie is a must. This is a must purchase through the Criterion. It's On the Waterfront. On the Waterfront, if you haven't seen it, I actually consider it to be one of the best picture winners of all time, of all the films I've seen that have won Best Picture. It's a really, really great film that shows naturalistic acting and just really, really grounded filmmaking. It's directed by Elia Kazan, stars Marlon Brando in what I consider his best performance. Yeah, his best performance. And it's that perfect mix. It's not iconic. It's not like iconic, or it's not like The Godfather where you watch his performance and you can go, you can try to do the voice and everything. It's like, I'm not even doing it right. And you can kind of parody it. This is one of those performances where it's really difficult to parody it, and it's just so excellent. He's like, Marlon Brando is so great in this movie. Lee J. Cobb is amazing in this movie. Such a violent person. At first I thought he was more caring than he was, and then I realized, no, he's a violent individual. And then Eva Marie Saint in this movie, I think it was her film debut. She won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. Well deserved. This is what I love too, the art style of this movie. Essays in this are very good. I don't remember these ones because I did them a while back, but it's a brilliant artwork. And the DVD, which I have, has 3 discs. And you might be asking, why does it have 3 discs? Interesting fact, this movie has 3 versions of the same film. But once again, there's a reason for it. This movie has 3 versions of the same film because each film is in a different aspect ratio. You know, that thing that nobody cares about in regular viewing of movies? Yeah, this movie makes you realize, hey, there's a reason that we have aspect ratios and why it matters. And it comes in the 166:1 aspect ratio. It comes in a, let me just get it right, I want to get it right, 185:1 aspect ratio, which is the kind of ratio they had for when they were competing with television, because this came out in the 50s. So they wanted people to have a reason to come out into the theater, so to do that, they would increase the aspect ratio, so it's like, whoa, this is not something I can see on my regular 1:33:1 television screen, which they also have on this. And so they wanted to give people the kind of styling of film viewing that you would get in a theater. And with every single time. On the Waterfront was one of the first few films to basically do it for all different aspect ratios so that they could show it in any theater. That's why they have it this way. And it's brilliant. It also has one of the best supplement interviews I have, talking with Elia Kazan. It's called Elia Kazan, An Outsider, made in 1982, an hour-long documentary. It's one of the best supplements you'll ever see, especially if this is a movie that I think any actor should get. Actors especially. It's really allows you to look at the beauty of improvisation, screenplay acting, like acting with the screenplay, and naturalistic, and bringing yourself to the role. It's hands down one of the greatest films to be created in America, and yeah, what else can I say? It's a brilliant film. The next film is another Akira Kurosawa film, kind of an impulse buy as well, Rashomon. This is actually my favorite Kurosawa film, and I've seen 6. I've seen Throne of Blood, Seven Samurai, Ran, Ikiru, Rashomon, and I'm trying to think if it was actually 6 or if I was just saying one extra to sound important. No, I've only seen 5. Those are the 5. This is my favorite. It's only an hour and 20 minutes long, and yet there's so much to unpack in this movie. Again, the thing that I love about this is in the essay that it has, once again, this movie actually comes with the source materials. It comes with the short story Rashomon, and it comes with the short story In the Grove. The In the Grove is more of the styling, because this is a movie that is basically interviews. If you don't know the film, it's basically about, there's a rape and a murder that happens in the woods, and the people are basically giving their testimony for it. And the testimony is coming from the bandit, who they believe committed the rape and the murder, the wife of the samurai who was murdered, a woodcutter, and he gives two stories, which is very interesting, and also the spirit of the dead man comes into him through a medium. And there's also a preacher there, and there's a man who's just, kind of like a scrounger who just shows up. And they're all discussing this story through 4 different lenses. It's so impressive how much you can actually think, because no one version is the definitive version, and it's not about that version. It's not about what version was right. It's about what is the human condition? Why are we the way that we are, that we can not be able to tell the truth or tell the exact facts as we see it, and we give these different stories? Why can't we just say what really happened? And for me, that's one of the kind of questions that I really like to think about when I watch a movie. But what really got me with this was one of Akira Kurosawa's earliest films, and there's a lot of things he threw at it. Like, he even has a moment where he has the camera looking directly up into the sun, which was something that they didn't really do in the 50s or in filmmaking then. He was still experimenting and still doing things. This also has a performance, Tashiro Mifune. I think that was his name. Oh, I want to get it right. He's the bandit. This is an excellent performance from the bandit in this movie. Everyone gives a great performance, but this is the movie. It's the same actor from Throne of Blood. He's one of my favorite actors to watch because he is so versatile and he is so energetic and energized and commanding of screen presence. He's one of those great actors who just he could just seep off the screen. It was so brilliant to watch him in this movie. The next movie is a film that I've talked a little bit about, like I've hinted at, but I haven't really discussed too much. I don't think, anyway. And that is the first Blu-ray I bought off of the Criterion Collection, Jean Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. I mean, I talk about this movie in my Beauty and the Beast analyzed version. I talk about this in my review, my classy review of Beauty and the Beast from 1991. And this movie is... it's tough for me to describe what I love about it. This is a movie that's trying to get adults to dream. Again, trying to get them to go back to that time of fantasy and wonderment. Because this was filmed in 1946. And it was filmed in France. And it was one of the first films. I think the thing that got me was when I found out there was a French version of Beauty and the Beast. I'm like, oh, cool. But the thing that really got me was that this was actually the first, or one of the first films to come out of France after World War II. And it made me consider what that kind of mindset can do to people. And I mean, it's happened with North American culture ever since 2001. And even before then, in the 1960s, it altered people's perception of things. Current events affect how we create media, and this movie is doing that. It's trying to get adults to dream. It's trying to get them back into a little place where they don't worry about looking over their shoulder constantly, and just to feel the wonder of cinema and of stories again. And for me, what I love about this movie so much is when I watched the animated film first, then I watched this film, and then I read the fairy tale. Now, what I loved so much is that when I read the fairy tale, I realized that this movie had more of an impact on the animated film of Beauty and the Beast than the actual fairy tale did. It made me really realize that this was an adaptation of the original source material, and the Beauty and the Beast in the animated version was an adaptation of an adaptation, which I thought was so interesting. This is the movie that introduces the Beast as a cat-like creature, because it's not very well explained. This is also the movie that introduced the idea of a male antagonist, a man who's trying to stand in the way of the Beast and Beauty. And this is a movie that is focusing on the subtext of the story and trying to add some kind of deeper layer to it. And it's such a beautiful movie. It is hauntingly enchanting. It is what I consider... It's what Shape of Water was to our time now, like in 2017, except it's more of a... It's more statuesque than I think... Shape of Water was more of like a really, really like bold painting or something that you would see in a museum, like really, really bold colors. This one is more of like a statue. If you were to look at it, it's very much like this elegant sculpture that has been created, that you would find in like an old room or something. It's so, so beautiful. And I've listened to both commentaries on it, and the commentaries involved in these films are very insightful, very interesting. What I really love too is seeing like the makeup for the Beast in one of the supplements. It also has a vast amount of essays, and while I was reading them, I really enjoyed these ones as well. I'm trying to remember which one it was that got me. I don't want to guess. I think that all of the essays are informative, and they really helped spur my own imagination on this film. But yeah, I've seen this movie I think 4 or 5 times now. It's just it's an excellent film, and this is a must on Blu-ray. I think the DVD on the Criterion Collection doesn't have nearly as much stuff as this film does, and it's well worth your time, as are all the films I just talked about today. So thank you guys so much for sitting down and listening to my order of the Criterion Collection this time. Thank you guys so much. Take care of yourselves.